All right, we're going to call this special meeting of the County Commissioners to order. Madam, Controller Sophie, could you please do a roll call?
Yes, Commissioner Barnes. Commissioner Mulder. Commissioner Augustine.
Here.
Commissioner Hensel.
Here.
Commissioner Pearl-Wright. Here. Commissioner Youngquist. Commissioner Moutry.
Here.
Commissioner Brailer.
Here.
Commissioner Drosha.
Here.
Commissioner Toomey.
Here.
Commissioner Hanson.
Here.
Commissioner Lotzenheiser. Commissioner Holmes. And Commissioner Rowe.
I want to ask if the chairman was
I'm here.
I saw him.
Chairman Mott.
That's all right.
This is the clerk's responsibility.
Yeah.
I'm not paid.
Well, welcome everyone. I want to thank you for coming tonight. This is the first time we've done anything like this, so we really didn't know how many would show up. So we're glad you're here. I'm going to get a brief explanation of what this is all about. So the county, before COVID hit, we kind of dived into finances a little deeper and realized that we're probably going to have an issue that we're going to have to address eventually. And then COVID hit, so that kind of messed up a lot of things for all of us. And then the federal government, as you know, probably gave a lot of the municipalities and counties a lot of money, and so we've been working with that. But now we're at a point where we have to make some decisions, and we want to hear from you. That's why we did this town hall. We're going to have another one next month. And we've been doing, we did some internal town halls with employees and sheriff's department. And now it's time, we want to hear from you and what you envision would happen. But we have to do something because our county and our employees are way underpaid. And as you know, if you are familiar with any type of business, you know that the workforce is very slim out there. And so we don't have, the workforce that we used to. So the competition is really tough. So the format for tonight is basically an interaction. So usually when it's public speaking at a regular meeting, it's just, the public speaking, the board. But this is going to be interaction. So to give you a little background, we have a work group of four of us, former county chairs, Commissioner Augustine, Commissioner Mulder, and Commissioner Joe Brailer, and myself. And we've been working on diving deep into the details of our issue that we have and lack of funds. So the four of us have a board or a work group called the Financial Stability Work Group. And we have been reporting to the full board throughout the year. And we've been doing these town halls. So, but for this, we're bringing in the other commissioners so that, we can be part of it as well, because they serve, some districts that we don't serve, the four of us. So, so with that, we'll get started. So please, if you got a question, a statement, or anything that you want to address to us, please, the podium is all yours. That's why we're here. So please don't be shy. Anyone? I'll give you a little background. So in 1963, so the state came up with a constitution amendment that the county had to either do a 15 mil or 18 mil cap. And we've been working on the 15 mil cap for a long time. Most other counties do as well. But the actual county, the administration part, only gets 5 mils of that. So that gets divided up between the school districts and ISD and the county townships. So just to give you a history of where we're at. And the county commissioners in 1978 actually put that into place. So we've been working with that budget since 1978, and the county has not increased any revenue since then for administration purposes. So just to give you a little background.
Want to just mention the report from Ed?
Yeah, so what we're doing is the Financial Stability Work Group has been tasked with doing a report, and this town hall is part of the process of putting that report together and coming back to the full board in May with a decision on which way we're gonna go. And so, we gotta raise some revenue somehow, or we're gonna really fall behind, and some services will probably, won't be, won't be where they should be to the community, so. Well, we'd like to hear from you, so.
Go ahead, Terrence.
Yeah, Commissioner Augustine.
Thank you, Chairman Mott. Yeah, just to kind of set the stage a little bit for I know us commissioners have had conversations about this, but for those of you in the audience that are here participating tonight. So unfortunately, as the chairman mentioned, we discovered quite some time ago that long-term, our budget just was not going to be sustainable. And as he said, that was prior to COVID hitting us, and after that, obviously, the changes in the workforce. And so everybody has kind of seen our struggles, I think, especially in the out county with attracting sheriff's deputies, public safety, even prosecutors, attorneys to come work for the county, because unfortunately, just like all other private and public entities, we're competing with people in our area and quite frankly outside of our area for the talent. And we have a lot of talent here. We've had a lot of talent here for a lot of years, and we've tried our best to try to take care of our employees and make sure that they feel that they have a place here and to give them a nice workplace. Unfortunately, because of the cost of the workforce out there right now, specifically in public safety and other areas here in the county, it's just, we're at a tipping point to where we can no longer provide the services that the county has always provided at the current level of revenues. And unfortunately, as a county, we're very limited on how we can address additional revenues. And so the work group has been working in various forms. Jim mentioned that, the four of us are working together. Prior to Jim's time as chair, the previous chair worked with the three of us. We've had several iterations of this group. I think I suggested that we form this group back when Chairman Mulder, or Commissioner Mulder was the chair, prior to my time as being chair. And as Jim said, we were looking at ways to deal with this prior to the COVID pandemic. But unfortunately, once that hit, there was no way that we were going to talk about additional revenues. It was really tough to really forecast because of the changes in the services that the county was providing and everything that was going on in the world. Following that, the federal government allocated a lot of funds to local governments. And we have been using those funds to essentially cover our budget shortfall during the last few years. And knowing that at some point in time, we were going to be staring at a pretty substantial deficit. And just to lay the groundwork, the county has, under both Republicans and Democrats, has really passed continuation budgets throughout my tenure on the board, and I think pretty much everybody else's tenure that's on the board right now, because we never had enough revenue to grow the county back to what I would say would be financial, what's the word I'm looking for? Pre-2009, the Great Recession, thank you. The levels have never really grown back up to what they were before that as far as the level of services and employees that we've had at the county, because we've never really been able to. One of the reasons that we are so hamstrung with our budget is because we have, as a lot of most entities like us, we have obligations to our former employees and to our current employees in the ways of pensions and healthcare benefits and things like that. Throughout the years, prior to my time on the board and after I got on the board, we have done several things to try to address those issues in a bipartisan fashion without ever sacrificing the benefits that we had provided or had promised to the employees that have already worked here. We've made changes. We recently made changes with the healthcare plan that our current retirees get that is going to save us millions of dollars and has actually improved the funding level of our OPEB which is the health insurance cost for our retirees, dramatically. And so we're doing things. We've done a lot of things over my tenure here, but unfortunately, we are at the point now to where there's nowhere else to go. And so when we talk about looking at a deficit, we don't want to get into too many specifics because there are a lot of numbers that go into these estimates, but we're looking at essentially multiple millions of dollars on an annual basis that we need to fill. And there's only two ways to do it, and that's additional revenues, or we have to cut. And as I've already said, there's not a lot of places to cut. And, our budget, about 75% of our budget, 73%, I think, to be exact, is personnel costs. So if you can imagine, there's just not a lot of other areas that we can cut. We could start selling buildings, I suppose, but we don't own many buildings that we're not using, that's for sure. So there's no other options at this point. And our budget annually, about 60% of that is for public safety in the courts. And so, we have a lot of our departments around the county some of them are 1 people, 2 people departments. Some of them are, may have half a dozen to a dozen people in them. But you look at the biggest department that we have, and that's the sheriff's department. And it's also the department that we're struggling to try to find employees to work for us. So it all leads to, at some point in time, if we have to start cutting, it's going to affect the sheriff's department in a much greater fashion than it will the rest of the county. That's just the facts of what how our county government is made up. So obviously that will create a major impact. We've already ended up cutting our night road patrol and are relying on the Michigan State Police at this point in time. Fortunately, we haven't had any major issues, but we could. And I know the sheriff would really like to see us be able to offer a better package to attract talent here. And I'm sure many others, and we've heard from a lot of you, would like us to invest in public safety. So what we're trying to do is we're trying to figure out a way to give you, the public, not only the opportunity to talk to us tonight and into the future as to what you expect county government to look like and what you'd like to see out of your government, but we also are looking at ways that we can give you the options of how much you want to fund it. None of us want to pay higher taxes, Democrats or Republicans. We don't want to pay higher taxes if we don't have to. But we also understand that there are certain levels of service that we as a county have to provide. And so what we're looking at doing is potentially going out and asking you, the residents of this county, to tell us how you want to fund county government and give you the option. And unfortunately, if we are unsuccessful in finding new revenues, then at that point in time, there's only one thing that we will be able to do, and that will be cut services, cut employees, cut staff. I think we have 15 or so current vacancies in the sheriff's department as far as just deputies on road patrol. So, likely the first step is to just not fill those positions. And I think there's a lot of people, specifically in the Out County, that rely on the sheriff's department that would not be too happy about that. So it's our opinion that we think it's the responsible thing to at least ask our voters and our residents what they want county government to look like, and then we and future boards will have to be responsive to the residents of this county to try to hopefully, do the will of the people and set the government at the level that they expect. So I hope that gives you a little bit of a background. I know it's kind of hard to get up and just start talking if you don't have a background as to what we're dealing with here, but hopefully that gives you somewhat of an understanding of the struggle that we are facing. And, I want to applaud Chairman Mott and staff as well for coming up with the idea of, having these town halls, because I think it is important. We had a town hall recently, I know some of you in the audience were here, with local township and city elected officials. And we thought it turned out great. It wasn't the greatest topic to talk about, obviously, but it was a great opportunity for us to hear from those elected officials that serve here in our county. And that's what we're doing tonight, and that's what we're going to be doing again on April 17th. So if you're watching this online, Please, if you can attend, April 17th, there will be another town hall. We'll have another discussion, and hopefully we'll be able to incorporate what the public is looking for in our final report that we're going to ultimately present to the board and ask the board to take action on. So, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Mulder.
Thank you, everyone. Commissioner Augustine alluded to the fact that most of our revenues go toward personnel. We are, as a county, we do work for the people of Eaton County, and mostly it's done through our people. We have fabulous staff. We have people that are dedicated and have worked for the county for decades. Some of them are new. But it's always been the people that reach out and touch the people of our county. That's who we see and who we know. Another part of that whole process isn't just people, but it's also infrastructure. 2/3 of our budget go toward personnel costs. The rest essentially goes toward infrastructure type things, buildings, maintenance, the sorts of things that everyone has to deal with. You look at your own household budget and you know that there are just things that have to be done. If you let stuff slide too long, you just try to Band-Aid over everything and do small patches and try to fix things as they come up, but don't do a long-lasting job. You're gonna get in the hole. Over my tenure here, the last 15 years, frankly, our maintenance staff has done a fabulous job keeping everything running, keeping things going, making sure that leaks aren't coming through the roofs, and making sure that the concrete is not heaved up and cracked out around the facility. But in the end, this stuff takes money also. And during my tenure as the chair, I think sometimes we focused a lot on personnel and sometimes to not putting enough focus into some of the maintenance costs and some of the capital improvements that are necessary for a facility of our type. This building is 50 years old. There's a lot of stuff that gets done and has to get done. And honestly, it all costs money, and it costs a lot more today than it did 50 years ago. And one of the new maintenance costs that we've got, and is something that we never thought about 15 years ago, and that would be our IT infrastructure. Oh my gosh, you say, well, it's just computers, it's just software. Well, you know what? It is, and it's expensive. Back when I started as a commissioner, I joke, I mean, it's been 15 years, but, you know, our IT consisted pretty much of paper and typewriter ribbons. And that's a lot different today than it was. We have subscriptions to software and Microsoft, and the price just keeps going up on all these things. And honestly, to make us more effective for the people of our counties, we're developing a lot of cloud growth, and we're getting a lot of opportunities for citizens to interact with our codes and our building departments and the county itself, the clerk's office, online. All this has changed, and all of that costs money. And you don't think about it. You go ahead and get on your computer and you want to look at some records for your house, your tax records from the treasurer's office, and you just expect it to be there. You want that stuff to be at your fingertips. You want to have immediate access to it, and we want to give it to you. We want it to be there for all of us, but that comes at a cost. And it's a cost that never was factored in the 70s as something that was going to be a major expense. And all I can say is it is a major expense. Stuff costs money. Those prices have been added to our budgets in a kind of a sneaky, creepy sort of a way, little bits every year. Suddenly you've got this software package, or you've got this fix. You know, you've got an elevator that you've been working on, and you've got the company coming every year to fix your elevators, and somewhere along the line, the fixes become really expensive. And again, we put the Band-Aids on, we try to do what we have to do with our infrastructure, but you reach a point where you have to look at some of this stuff and say, you know, we're going to have to fix it or do without it. And that's sort of the point we're at right now. fix it or do without it. And I think that's, it's a sad statement, but I think we want to do the best for our citizens. This is the state that we're in, so, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Mulder.
And I want to apologize too for this format. It's not my fault, or it's, I was looking for more interactive kind of a format, but our attorneys told us that if we're going to all meet as a group and we're going to talk about things that deal with possible policy or process, that we have to have a meeting and run it like a meeting like this. I think all of us would be more comfortable walking out there and interacting directly with the citizens, because, we do that every day. As commissioners, our lives revolve around the citizens in our neighborhoods, our local citizens. And I and all of us spend a lot of time just jawboning at the coffee shop or on the street with our citizens, getting ideas and talking with them. So it's kind of awkward for us to sit around the circle and speak out this way, and I apologize for that, but it's legal, so we have to do it. So I apologize.
Yeah, go ahead. We want to be able to hear you through the mic. We're too far away.
My name is Joe Chin. I am a resident of the city of Charlotte, and I also serve under city council. We feel your pain. However, we also feel the pain of our citizens that, they're dealing with the same thing that we are as an organization in terms of putting food on the table, taking care of their kids, et cetera, from that standpoint. One of the things that I think would be very helpful, because of course, we send out the tax bills and we get the brunt of the citizens screaming about how their taxes have gone up. We know that based on the millage and your property values, you do get more money year after year based on the value of the assessed property, like we do. However, again, it is certainly, I think, important that, when somebody in the city, and I try to explain to them that, ours is this 20% of the bill, this bill that you get, and then try to, the schools get this, and the county gets this, et cetera. It's a concept that's hard, they just look at the fact that they have to come to the city of Charlotte and pay their taxes. But if a Charlotte resident comes up to me and says, well, what am I getting from the county? And I, as a public official as well, I really don't know. I think you need to do some education as to what is it? You want us to tell you what is it today? And tell your story to folks, because, we don't see the county sheriffs that much. We have our own police force. Our fire department takes care of the city as well as, some of the townships around. So I think that if you're going to get city residents engaged, and, there's more of us out there that vote, they're going to have to know exactly what is it that you're providing us. And what is it going to do to them personally if you have to start cutting back, et cetera, from that standpoint? Because it's not only the sheriff's office, it's the prosecutor's office. I was here for the meeting with the city officials, and, the fact that, we're short prosecutors, et cetera, from that standpoint. We've been trying to fill police officer positions ourselves. We got 2 vacancies, we can't fill them. And we're offering bonuses, sign-up bonuses, and, from that standpoint. But again, for us to just wholesale start increasing all the employees' wages, we'd have a hard time doing that and letting our citizens know when they're trying to meet their bills. And, if you look at the earnings or salaries, average salaries of our families in Charlotte, it's not great from that standpoint. So they're going to have to see that these are the things that are benefiting from the county, and these are the things that we're going to lose if we have to, if we can't raise any more money for the county. And it's got to be something that's going to hit them in their pockets, or, you know, their pocketbooks, or some service that they're relying on that won't be there for them from that standpoint. So hopefully that, you know, like I said, we're in the same boat. We're getting ready to start our budget session, and, you know, we just, we've got the same issue with our pension system. At least we were able to secure from the state some money to get our pension program back into shape from that standpoint. But again, it's going to be tough all around. We know everything from our fuel to supplies, et cetera, and the services that we have to buy are all increasing. We recently had our IT contractor came in and said, I can't service you anymore because I can make more money with the staff I have with other contracts, and because I signed a long-term deal with you, I can't do it anymore. And it left us in a lurch from that standpoint. But again, IT, expensive. We know that from that standpoint, so.
Yeah, you made a good point. I'm glad you brought that up, that a lot of people don't realize the services that, you know, we provide, because we are, at the county level, we're an administrative government. That's what we do. We administrate services, you know, and that's the way it was set up. My own family doesn't even know what I do, so. You know, and then, so when I start listing all of the services that the county provides, they're like, oh, really? You know, they just assume that those just happened. And so, yeah, you are correct. There's going to be, we have a tough task ahead of us to educate the public on what we do and what we do provide, and some of those services may look drastically different if, you know, if we can't bring in some revenue somewhere.
Right.
So, yeah, thank you for all those points.
Ready, thank you.
Commissioner Mulder.
You know, I always wanted to say that county government, works in the background. People don't know what we do. When I talk about being a county commissioner, you really don't understand what it is that the county does. And that's by design. Frankly, we do a lot of stuff that just keeps the wheels on the track, and people use us. Very rarely, and hope not that often, do you have to go to the other side of this complex. You know, what happens over here in the courts and in the judicial area, you know, you don't want to be over there. You don't want to do that stuff. You know, that's not a happy place always. And yet it needs to be done, and it needs to be done efficiently, and it needs to be done in a way that satisfy the needs of our citizens. And getting the story out. What we've always done as county government are things that are in the background. We're doing assessing. You know, what's assessing? How does that work? We're doing zoning and planning. Well, how does that affect me? It doesn't affect you until you need it. And then all of a sudden, when it's not there, it affects you. And we do the stuff that just is background work, but it's critical infrastructure, it's critical work toward the daily societal needs. And again, sometimes most citizens are totally unaware of it. And that's sort of our problem. It's hard to toot our own horn. When something goes wrong, it gets in the news and it gets out front and people complain and there's a big Facebook outcry about it. But when we do it right, people just move on with their lives, and thank goodness, that's exactly how it should be. But again, that makes it difficult for us to get out here and talk to people and say, this is what we are and this is what we do. And I know it doesn't sound that glamorous, because it's not. It's just taking care of stuff and keeping your lives running in a way that you don't have to worry about what happens on your roads, other than getting, you know, you only complain about if the snowplow doesn't show up. But it's all stuff that we do. So I want to add that in to what Mr. Chin was saying about letting people know about what we're up to.
Yep, thank you. Yeah, please.
My name is Paula McCloy. I'm from Vermontville. I guess the thing that's confusing to me is like for years, we've heard that we've got unfunded liabilities. And I guess I don't understand why it wasn't taken care of before. It's like kicking the can down the road. And I think that's what people I talk to are confused about that, and they don't understand why that wasn't taken care of. And now, people that are retired or unlimited income, it's like, okay, I have to somehow find the money to pay for this, just like you do. And it just seems like you want to cut what affects the people the most, almost like pass it or we'll cut the cops. And that's just how it sounds to me. It's like when the school millage didn't pass, they always eagerly cut anything that affected the kids. Kind of like we're disciplining you for not giving you. I don't know, that's just the way it sounds, because I've heard this unfunded liability for years, that we had this problem, and I don't understand why it wasn't taken care of. So maybe you could explain that?
Commissioner Augustine.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, you're absolutely right. The unfunded liability discussion is always difficult because it's very complex. We've been talking about it, like I said, since I've been on the board, on how do we deal with that while not taking away the benefits that we promised the people that worked here for 30+ years. So one of the things that was tough for me to understand until I got on this board and learned more about how the unfunded liability works is certain things that you do to help stabilize yourself in the long run, unfortunately, in the short run, makes things worse for you. So for instance, the board before I got on changed the OPEB, or the medical insurance for retirees, and essentially eliminated that benefit for people going forward. And what that did was it closed the group of people that were paying into it. So with a liability like that, there's two groups paying in. There's the employer and the employees. And unfortunately, if you take a whole group of employees out, then the employer has to pay more to make up for the fact that those employees are no longer paying in it. So it's kind of like, if you keep it going, if you keep that going, then you're better off in the short run because you just continue to have more people pay into it while your long-term liability continues to balloon and become a problem. We've done some things to try to address that. We took some action through collective bargaining with the Sheriff's Department specifically, because we looked at the benefit that they had for their retirement multiplier, they call it, and which essentially determines how much you get in retirement for your pension. We negotiated, and that was changed through collective bargaining to the benefit of the county. Unfortunately, when you do that, that's a detriment to the employee, because now they aren't getting the retirement that they had before. Now, again, that changes things for the better to a certain degree, but then when you're trying to attract talent, now you don't have that benefit to offer them. And so for years, not just Eaton County, but all county and local governments have been able to essentially, what I said at the township meeting was essentially kind of live a lie. Because we weren't able to just pay people a higher rate to compete with the private industry or other municipalities or counties, we would give them this benefit, this pension benefit that was never sustainable. Quite frankly, I'd love to bring the people in here that set this pension up years ago, because they're the ones that screwed this up for everybody, to be honest with you, and we're trying to deal with it. And unfortunately, like I said, when you take some action to deal with the long-term ramifications, in the short term, it makes it even worse. So we have done some things, but it's created some issues on the other end, like I said, with attracting talent. We could do more to cut that down or try to cut that down, but unfortunately, that's not going to help us attract people either. So if we free up some funds to be able to cover our shortfall, but we can't attract people to come work for us anyway, then it doesn't really matter at the end anyway. So it's a very complex issue, and I don't mean to make it sound even more complex than it is. It's hard to explain because, again, on the surface you think, okay, we've got this unfunded liability, well, let's just cut that benefit. But in the short term, it just makes your budget deficit even worse, because then the county's got to fill that gap until that 20 years or that 30 years is up. You know, we're looking at, every year we pay, what, $5 to $6 million to our pension liability to pay that down. And essentially, we're just covering the costs of our current retirees. It's not really adding a whole lot to our savings. We're better funded than a lot of other counties, again, due to some of the things that we've done. The change that we recently did with our OPEB, or our, I'm sorry, I keep using that term, but the retirees' health benefits, by changing the plan that we use and utilizing a Medicare Advantage plan through Blue Cross, we're able to save, and I don't have the numbers in front of me, but again, we're able to save millions of dollars a year. I think we went from, Connie, I don't know if you have this number at your fingertip, we went from like 37% funded to now 60% funded.
2 to 66.
So I was close, but yeah, so, you know, so we made it, that's a huge change. I never thought in my life that I would see us get to 66% funded, so just making that change has made a big difference in that particular liability. Unfortunately, we weren't able to put away extra money towards that anyway, so it just mitigated how much extra we'd have to come up with for that. And to your comment, and I totally understand, because that's what it sounds like when you tell people if you don't support additional revenues, you're gonna lose this. I get it, it kind of sounds like a threat. Unfortunately, as I said, because of the amount of our budget that goes to those departments and the fact that we can't fill those positions anyway, that's just naturally where it's going to get hurt the worst and where you're going to feel it the most. And, you know, the sheriff's department is a crucial element of public safety for the entire county, specifically the Out County. But I would argue, you know, I believe the sheriff, when we had our meeting with the cities, you know, he could quote the number of times that the sheriff's department had to assist cities like Charlotte or like Grand Ledge, where I'm from. And so without the sheriff's department there helping, then it just makes things even worse and harder on the cities that are also struggling with attracting talent. So I assume, just like us, when we don't have enough workforce here with public safety, we rely on the state police. Same thing is probably true for the cities. They rely on us to a certain degree to fill that need. And so, and not to mention the fact that, you know, the cities don't have Doug Lloyd, they don't have a prosecutor, they don't have judges in courts, you know, we don't have city courts here or district attorneys. So when the city of Charlotte or the city of Grand Ledge picks somebody up for a crime, they come here. They get housed here, they get charged here, they get prosecuted here, and that's all county government funds. So I hope that at least gave you a little bit of context as to the unfunded liability. I mean, it's like I said, it's difficult to wrap your head around.
So the 3 mil, that would be what you would be asking for, 3 mil?
Well, the 3 mills, the number that, I think that you're referencing, the number that Jim, or Chairman Mott had pointed out earlier, that there's a cap on what the county can allocate as far as millages countywide, and that includes the townships and the ISDs. And that millage rate was set back in 1979, I think, in the 70s, way before I was born. Okay, not way, but a little bit before I was born. But it was set back then, and they decided at the time that they weren't going to allow the county and the townships and the ISDs to go up to the maximum 18. They set it at 15. And so that is, you've alluded to one of the options that we're looking at, which is to essentially put that cap to the 18 so that future boards could allocate or could levy more property taxes on the residents to help pay for these budget shortfalls. That's one of the things that we've been talking about. We've looked at other things as well. We've looked at potential public safety dedicated millages. Dedicated millages have their own problems. Because when you, in my mind, and this is what I've said for years, if you're going to tell people that we're going to put a public safety millage on the ballot, then you better damn well protect public safety. And unfortunately, the amount that we would have to put on the ballot for public safety, it would be so much that we wouldn't be able to protect public safety. Because we could put a public safety millage on the ballot, and then we could go ahead and take all that money that we used to appropriate to public safety and put it back in the general, kind of like the state does with the lottery, so I'm told. Sorry. So I'm told. So, you know, you can play those games. We never wanted to do that. You know, we never wanted to play the games. We wanted to be honest with our taxpayers. None of us wanted to raise taxes. I mean, like I said, that's not our idea of fun. But if we have to, our job is to try to at least tell the residents of this county what their government costs. And that's kind of how I look at that. And if we do go to the voters and ask them for an increased millage, at that point in time, to me, that gives the board, at least next year's board, direction on what to do with the county. And, you know, it's not a pretty picture if there aren't additional revenues. I mean, we've got fund balance that we can utilize next year that we'll probably be able to skate by with little impact, but we will still have, we will have positions that we won't be able to replace, and they will likely be in the sheriff's department. They could be in other areas as well, don't get me wrong. But again, when we have a quarter of our workforce, I believe, in the sheriff's department. So just by numbers and percentages, you just know that that impact is going to be felt more strongly there. And then you've got departments, like I said earlier, that have 2 or 3 people. It's hard to cut one person out of a 3-person department, whereas cutting, you know, a deputy on the road that we can't fill anyways has less impact than it would just a smaller department.
So other counties are paying their deputies a lot more?
So.
Is that why we can't fill them? I'm sorry, I don't mean to hog.
No, this is what this is about. No, this is great. And other commissioners, please jump in. Don't let me take all the time, but,
Are they?
Commissioner
is that why
Brailer's
you
after
can't-
you.
okay. Yeah, well, that is what we're hearing. You know, we've done some studies. We've been provided some information through our unions, our labor unions here, that, you know, have shown us what other counties and areas, it's not just counties that we're competing with, cities, the state of Michigan, state police, the Attorney General's office. I think Doug has lost some people to the Attorney General. I mean, it's just, those are the types of entities that we're competing with. And as I said, we've never really been able to compete with wages. We've been able to do it with benefits. And unfortunately, that's just not sustainable. So yeah, to a certain degree, that's true. You know, we're a little bit more competitive. We just got done with contract negotiations, and, you know, we were able to enter into a contract with the Sheriff's Department that I think will help us attract people. The problem is it's just not sustainable. We can't, if we don't find new revenues, the contract doesn't really matter because we won't have the money to pay them in a couple of years. So yeah, it is tough to compete in public safety. And it's not just a pay issue. I mean, we all know that everybody in not just the state of Michigan, but nationwide is struggling to find people to serve as, you know, police officers or sheriff's deputies or public defenders or prosecuting attorneys. That's just the world that we're in. So again, to me, I want to be honest with our taxpayers, and if the taxpayers say, listen, I don't want to pay that much, I'm fine with just having a more limited government, then we've got some decisions to make on how we're going to make that look like what our taxpayers want. But if the taxpayers say, look, I'm willing to pay a little bit more to have the government that we have or had, then, you know, then it's our job, I think, to be responsive to that. So that's the way I would see any kind of a discussion on a millage. I know a lot of times people say, well, you voted to put it on, so you're voting to increase my taxes. Well, I'm actually voting to give you a choice. And that's what I believe democracy is about, is choice. So.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Brailer, do you want to address?
Yeah, I just
Comment?
wanted to touch on one of the things that you said was the question about whether we kick the can down the road. I don't think a lot of people understand how this all came about. I've been on the board for quite a long time. And I can tell you that in terms of the pension requirements, we've paid every year exactly what MERS told us we needed to pay. We never did not do that. Back in the 80s, I know there were some communities that held back payments for pensions to spend in other areas. We didn't do that. And for a long time while I was on this board, while we were not at 100% funded, everyone was satisfied at the level that we were at funded. There was no quarrel, issue, nobody raised any concerns, including MERS. About 10, 12 years ago, MERS decided that, or the state, somebody besides us decided that not just us, but every community out there, since I don't think very few, if any, were at 100% funded. We were all probably in the 70s to 80s. That was a problem. And that's where this unfunded liability or unfunded mandate came from. MERS established a program by which we are supposed to be paying until 2038 an increased amount of money every year to meet that so-called unfunded liability. And we have been making that payment. So we have never backed off from those responsibilities. Commissioner Augustine indicated that we're spending some $5 to $6 million a year on to MERS for our pension obligations. About $500,000 of that is what we would be paying on a regular basis just to maintain the pension benefits that we have for our employees. The remainder is the amount of money that MERS is requiring us to pay for this so-called unfunded liability. The reality here is that we don't have any real choice. We have to pay it. And if we didn't have to pay it, if 10 years ago, whoever, the powers that be at the state level, whether it was MERS by themselves or the state government or whomever, made this decision, we probably wouldn't be having this conversation today, because we are straitjacketed to a certain extent to pay those monies, substantial monies, for what they consider to be an unfunded liability. So I want it to be clear, we as county government have never not paid our pension obligations. We didn't play that game. But and it's true, in fact, I had a meeting with the mayor of Lansing the other day. They've got the same problem. The county, Ingham County's got the same problem. You go community by community, and they have this problem because they are now being confronted with as I say, so-called unfunded liability that is sizable in amount, and they're being required to pay a fixed amount of which they have no choice. So that's one of the reasons, that's one of the problems that we have, quite frankly, that brings us to this evening. The others talked about the various problems, but one of the other things, having been on this board for quite a while, I can tell you that the job that a lot of the people that we have in this building, their jobs have changed substantially. The prosecutor's office now has to go through a great deal more in determining whether, in terms of the types of material they have available to them, because our deputies and most every police department now have body cams. Well, if you have which was unheard of when I came on this board in 1989, if you're going to charge someone with a criminal offense, you have to go through all of that. And so if you have 5 or 6 police officers or deputies, you have to look at all of their body cams. That takes time. If they were there for an hour, then you have 6 deputies, you're looking at 6 hours of tape. The courts have expanded substantially in terms of the types of specialty courts that they have. Those things didn't exist. Certainly not in 1978. They didn't exist when I came on this board in 1989. The prosecutor has to assign someone to those specialty courts. So not only do you have increased work within the courts itself, people that they have working on those specialty courts, and those are all good things and have helped people along the way. Veterans, people with substance abuse problems. But the prosecutor now has to find people to be assigned to those courts. Our clerk, her role has expanded over the years and is greatly going to expand this year in terms of early voting and the types of changes that we have in the voting system. You can discuss whether those are good or bad things, but the reality is that they now exist, and she has to have the staff and the time and the people to be able to fill those obligations. I think you can go to almost any office and see between now and what it looked like when I came on, that the responsibilities that they are meeting are greater than the ones that those offices had 30, 40 years ago. And that costs money. All of it costs money. So it's not just that, it certainly isn't that we ignored the problems. We've been looking at them for years, and we have over the years, and Commissioner Augustine talked about some of the changes we made in terms of retiree health care. I was here when we changed retiree health care, and we closed that class. I'm not a pension expert. We were told, the board at that time was told, that that was the smart way to save money. Turns out that was exactly the wrong way to save money, all right? So, do I regret that vote? Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do. For a number of reasons, not the least of which, the reality is that by closing the class, we've cost the county government a substantial sum of money that we wouldn't have probably be paying today if we had kept the class open, because we have nobody else that's contributing to it. So, all of those things are factors that go into why we're here tonight. Thank you for your interest, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah, Commissioner Augustine?
Yeah, I just want to, and don't feel like you have to stand up here if you don't want to, but yeah, unless you had something, I just wanted to
No, I don't
keep
even-
going down this because, Joe mentioned some of the things that we've done, and I know Councilmember Chin mentioned the fact that Charlotte got some money from the state. Unfortunately, in our case, by taking action and doing things to stabilize our funded level, we actually were in too good a shape to get money from the state. So that's, and obviously, like any state or federal program or any program that exists out there, they have to set a threshold for who they want to help, and they want to help the people that I guess are in the worst position. Unfortunately, that worked to our detriment. Because of the things that we did, they said, oh, they've got this under control, we don't need to help them. But obviously, as you can hear, it's not under control. We're just trying to do we're trying to use every tool that we have in our tool belt. And we're running out of tools to address that. So I just wanted to kind of touch on that a little bit because I know, some people might want to know, well, what, did we not apply for that money? Did we not ask the state? Trust me, we're in communication with the state all the time on ways to stabilize. And as Joe mentioned, it's not just us. Most other counties and municipalities are dealing with this same problem. And so unfortunately, some of those that didn't take action, for whatever reason, I'm not throwing barbs at them because they have their own situations, but some of them got additional money where we didn't to help our situation. So.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for that, because oftentimes we don't, hear what the community is thinking in terms of what we're putting out there. And so when you're interpreting something, it's good that we know that too, so thank you.
I think the important thing is that the state issued a mandate to all governmental, in 2019, I believe it was, that all the pension programs had to be 60% funded. There's over 500 governmental units across the state right now that were underfunded. So this is not unique to Eaton County. I mean, it's cities, villages, all over that. And the threat from the state, at least to the city, was if you need to have a plan to get to 60% in 5 years from now. That's a time frame. And if you don't present a plan, we're going to send in emergency managers. And that's the worst thing that can happen to any governmental unit, is to have the state send emergency managers in, because I was a state executive under Snyder, and some of the moves in terms of emergency managers just didn't work real well, like in Flint and Detroit, et cetera. So all the communities had to come up with a plan on how to get there at 60%. I mean, we had to immediately, in order for us to start our plan, we had to issue a non-vote millage increase for fire safety. The state legislature a few years back said you can assess, I think, 3 mills for public safety without the vote of the people, because this all falls in line with the Headley Amendment and all that stuff, even beyond that, so.
That's a good point that you made, because as Commissioner Brailer mentioned, as of last year, we were 62% funded.
Right.
But yet they punish you for being responsible.
Yep.
They want you to get to the 60%, and then when you do, you know,
Yeah, most of the communities that I know of were at 30, 40%. They were kind of following the direction of their financial people and their analysts. You know, it's how many people are going to die, how many people are going to retire, et cetera. And of course, the other thing that happened is because of the pandemic, we had a lot of people just retire instead of working. And that added more, because these were the long-term people that were still under the old pension that now you have to support, but the new people that you hire aren't putting the money into that fund at all. So that makes it that made it very difficult for folks to do that. So from that standpoint. But again, the state out of nowhere just said, okay, everybody, 60% based on our review of financials, and either do it or get a plan, or we come in and take care of it ourselves, so.
Yep, thank you for that information.
I hope my children don't find out that 60% is a good grade.
Yeah, whole different category.
Yeah. Sure, yeah, explain that to them, Jim. I'll let you do that.
Good evening. My name is Chris Anderson. I'm the Chief Assistant Prosecutor in the Prosecutor's Office, and I'm a resident of Carmel Township. I'm going to start on the sheriff's side for a second, because as a citizen, I've lost the protection. I think that we rely on the state police. For those of you who do or don't know, the state police does provide 24-hour coverage or overnight coverage, but it's a very limited coverage, and they're responsible in this county for 3 counties. So the Lansing Post is responsible for Clinton, Ingham, and Eaton County, and while they do dedicate cars to Eaton County, they have other obligations, and so I have lost that as I'm a citizen and a taxpayer. But I think it's interesting, Mr. Chin, Councilman Chin brought up the question about whether people realize what we do provide. And our office has, I think most people think about prosecutor and they think we have a singular responsibility to show up and prosecute crimes. We have over 500 obligations under state law, and they grow on an annual basis, including just this year, the requirement that we participate in the red flag or ERPO emergency or the extreme risk protection order hearings. We don't get a choice in that. And if you read the statute, we have very little obligation. However, we have a larger obligation based on court rule. And I think I appreciate the comments from Commissioner Brailer. He's absolutely right. Our job has changed dramatically. We use the Prosecutors Association for the state used the metrics. A few years ago, the state created the Michigan Indigent Defense Commission to try to enhance indigent defense across the state, in part because of a mandate that they needed to. They created a formula that said this is how many cases a public defender should handle. In our county, or across the state, frankly, public defenders' offices handle a fraction of the caseload in the court system. Now, in our county, that may be a higher fraction. I don't know what the number is. They might handle 75% of the criminal cases. Our office handles probably closer to 95% of them. There are city attorneys who handle some misdemeanors, but our office handles essentially the same number. Our office also has to handle our own appeals and prosecutes juvenile offenses, of which the Indigent Defense Commission offices do not participate in. But using their metric for how many cases an attorney should handle, our office is 7 attorneys short. We have had an opening of position availability since September, where we've had 5 applicants. Of those 5 applicants, 3 were unlicensed, 1 was not qualified, and the 5th one, when we called them within 3 days, had already accepted a position in another prosecutor's office. And it's the reality. There's a lot of things. It's not just to say that wages are one thing. There's a lot of factors to this. The pool of attorneys is very slim. But when we talk about wages, I don't think people understand, we have an open position for a legal assistant currently. That position starts at $15.55 an hour. I can drive down to Lansing Street, and most people can find a job working at the McDonald's is paying more than what we're paying, a legal assistant. Walmart or Myers is paying more. And anymore, the full-time benefit package, and I appreciate that we still have benefits, that full-time benefit package is no better now for our employees than it is in the private sector, to be honest. In the 10 years I've been here, I've lost multiplier on my pension. I've lost healthcare. It started out, I lost money on the healthcare savings plan. I've paid more for my health insurance, which I appreciate. It's good insurance. I'm not complaining. But when we're trying to sell to a young attorney or even a young legal assistant that we want them to come, we're going to pay them $15.55 an hour, they're going to pay 7% or 7.2% of their pension, they're going to pay for health insurance, and then they're going to pay for childcare. It is very tough to attract talent. It's almost impossible. When I became chief assistant in 2019, there was one attorney in our office that had less than 7 or 8 years of experience. One. We have lost over 100 years of experience in the last 5 years. It's much higher than that. I use the 100-year number. And currently, we have, including Mr. Lloyd, I believe we have 5 attorneys in the office with more than 7 years of experience out of the 11. And that loss of experience in a time when, in the constant turnover, the churn of employees at a time when the demands on our office continue to grow, makes it very difficult for us to do an effective job. I feel like a lot of times we are triaging, much like an ER, cases, and that's not fair to the people. That's not fair to the citizens. It's not fair to victims because every victim, to them, their case is the most important. And unfortunately, we don't have the resources. And I know that we've expressed this to this board year in and year out. Every year, Prosecutor Lloyd is down here asking for more staff, and you have heard the seven attorney number. And we also are appreciative of the fact that the purse is only so big. I don't know what the right answer is. I honestly don't. I appreciate the sentiment of the lady who was up before me about, we think about it as the threat of the cops. I mean, a lot of people don't understand that the road patrol is not a mandated function of the sheriff. It just flat isn't. I came from Branch County. I grew up in Coldwater. And they cut their road patrol down there in half back in 2011 because it's not a mandated function. Ingham County did that a number of years ago as well. And it affects the citizens. The most direct thing is seeing law enforcement. But I think the one thing and I'm going to speak on behalf of the sheriff's office and advocate for them, and law enforcement in general. I'm friends with all the chiefs. When you're constantly churning over police officers and your experience level in police officers diminishes, there's no other way to put it, but it diminishes the level of service that you get. It diminishes the experience of investigations, which affects our job. If police officers don't know what they don't know. If you've ever gone into a job, you don't know what you don't know. And when we're constantly, it applies to our office as well, when you're constantly rolling over help, which is what we're doing in the county, it's impossible to provide a good service to the people. So I appreciate that people be skeptical of the fact that I might stand up and say that we're underpaid or that we're understaffed. Both are true. I mentioned we've lost 100 years of service. We've lost 2 attorneys to the Attorney General's office. We've lost 2 attorneys to Livingston County who both took tremendous pay raises. The Attorney General's office the same way. We lost a legal assistant in 2018, I believe, to the Attorney General's office who left here, had been here for over 15 years, was topped out in our system, went to the Attorney General's office and started with a tremendous pay raise, and she was at the bottom of their pay scale. A victim advocate from our office might make $17, $18, $19 an hour. A victim advocate for the U.S. Attorney's Office starts at over $100,000. I'm not asking to get to those numbers. The point is that we have to be receptive to the fact that we're competing with a private sector that is paying more. And back when Commissioner Brailer joined this board, he's right. Part of the attraction for government employment was how government attracted people was these long-term benefits, and it kicked the can down the road. But that benefit was what helped people stay in it. You got a job, and that benefit is gone now, to be frank. And so I certainly see from a citizen's perspective, I see the need for services and for funding, but we need help. Our office needs help. We do the best we can, but we provide a service to every member of this community, every member. Whether they like us or not, we represent the people. And so we prosecute cases in the city of Charlotte. We prosecute cases in the city of Eaton Rapids. We prosecute in Potterville. We prosecute in every corner of this county. And that is one of the things that, at some point we have to be funded sufficiently to continue to do. So I certainly appreciate your time. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. I just want to point out that, to Chris's point, that first, if you look over on the screen, the report that we're going to be presenting to the full board, these are some items these are the top items that we're discussing and putting out there to the public that the problems that we have. And that first one is workforce retention, recruitment, and development. To Chris's point, during the internal town halls, we had one individual stand up and explain in her department kind of what she's going through. And she knows people outside in other counties that have doing the same work. And for the work that she is doing, with less staff, most other counties have more staff than she had in the department, and she's making less money than her counterparts. And that's pretty much across the board in this county. We've said it for quite a while. We've been balancing the budget on the backs of our employees for a long time. And they keep coming to us and saying, hey, please do something. Could you please do something? We want to work here, but it's becoming less attractive. So, thank you, Chris, for that point. And so this is where we are. And we just don't, we have a lot of good talent here. We don't want to lose them. We really don't, but we're at a tipping point. But Commissioner Augustine.
Yeah, just because it's been a minute since I spoke. No, I'm just kidding. No, Chris, he mentioned the fact that the benefits are not as appealing to folks out there as they used to be. And even if we do still have some good benefits. I mean, we do still have defined pension benefits, and that is something that a lot of people don't have. Unfortunately, the way those work is they take money out of your paycheck. You contribute, and we contribute to your pension. And so, as the employee looks at it, they just get, as a lot of people are looking at paycheck to paycheck, they look at their balance in their bank account after their direct deposit, and they say, "Where did all this money go?" Well, some of it went to their pension. And we had heard from several people that was not attractive to talent, especially trying to hire people in the sheriff's department, that people they didn't really care that much about their pension. Now, I think a lot of that was just not understanding what it is, because they should care, because it is a tremendous benefit. But if that's not what they're looking for, we need to figure out how to attract people. So back when we had a lot of discussion, I think last year, about the idea of how do we attract more people to the sheriff's department, we had people from the out county and sheriff's deputies in here asking us to do more for them. We proposed the idea of going into bargaining early, which we did. And one of my thoughts in doing so was to change that benefit. If people didn't think that defined pension was a benefit for them, then we can move on from that, not from the people that already have it, because again, I don't want to take something away that somebody's worked 25 years to earn. That's not fair. As Chris mentioned, a lot of people gave up pay on the front end to get that benefit on the back end. So how could we do that to take that away from them? But, to look at the new people that were coming in and just treat them differently if that's not what they wanted. Unfortunately, when we looked at that option, the mathematicians told us, well, if you do that, you're not going to save anything because, again, you're closing that class and now you have less people paying into it. So just going back to the idea that we've tried, we're trying, we're short of throwing things at the wall to see what sticks. I mean, we're trying to figure out ways to do this. This is, asking the taxpayers for revenue is certainly a last resort for us. And you could argue whether that's good policy or not. Maybe we should have asked the residents, maybe we should have been honest to the residents of this county 10 years ago. And maybe it would have been different. But it didn't work out that way. There was never a willingness on this board's part since I've been on it to ask people to fund the county government at a higher level. And so that just never happened. And we were able to, again, constantly, it was, we come into the budget discussions every year and it's like, oh, we're looking at this $4 million gap. We've got a $4 million deficiency. And then through some magic maneuvering, the controller would come to us and say, all right, we got a balanced budget. And, a lot of that was, as I mentioned earlier, just by us doing continuation budgets, doing whatever we could to make sure that we didn't increase the deficit that we were looking at, and also from savings from not hiring people. Quite frankly, that's where a lot of those savings comes from. At the end of the year, the reason that our financial position doesn't look worse this year, other than the ARPA funds that we received to the tune of almost $4 million this year, was the fact that we couldn't hire people, so we saved that money. And so that money was there, now available to help fill those holes. But certainly that doesn't help Chris's office, it doesn't help Sheriff Reich in his department. And so, again, just trying to make sure that everyone understands the things that we're trying to do, that this was not just a willy-nilly, okay, let's ask our people to look at a tax increase. Because quite frankly, the easy thing to do would be to do what Ingham County did a couple of years ago and just say, all right, road patrol's not mandated, let's cut that. But there's more to that story too, because, we mentioned the fact that the state police is backfilling road patrol. Well, guess who has to pay for all the IT infrastructure in those cars? We still do. So Eaton County still has to pay for that type of stuff. It's not a dollar for dollar trade. Even if MSP was providing the service that our residents wanted, it's still coming at a cost to our taxpayers. So, this is the fun stuff that you learn when you get this deep into government, unfortunately. But unfortunately, that's the reality of it. So that's kind of what we're dealing with. So, even if we did try to take the easy route, and say, okay, road patrol is not mandated, let's just run a jail. First of all, I'm sure we'd hear from a lot of you people and a lot of other people in the county about that. But second of all, it still wouldn't solve our problem. We'd still have to deal with the fact that we still have to pay for that infrastructure for the state police or whoever is covering that. So all these hidden costs and things that people just don't understand, including a lot of us, throughout the years, we're all learning up here too. So some of us have been here longer than others, Joe, but but no, it's just a constant battle.
So we have about a little over 15 minutes, so please, anyone else, please make a comment, statement, question. Don't be shy. Young, you got something to say?
Am I allowed to speak?
Yeah, you are allowed to speak.
Well, I just want to say we appreciate you coming here. This has been a long process this year last year, to begin working steadily on what the county needs. And you have a great Board of Commissioners here. You have a great group, the Financial Stability Work Group. They're really taking a serious look and a deep dive into what the county needs. So what you're here for is something that we haven't done. We haven't asked you what you want, what your needs are. Everyone has a different need. Everyone has a different need in their community. You're serving Delta Township, you're serving Bellevue and Eaton Rapids. So you all have different needs. This board serves those different areas, but they serve the county. So their first, as I like to say, to give them instructions, is that their first goal is to serve Eaton County and then their district. Because Eaton County, again, is one. So I think we have like an identity crisis between, and you'll hear this, people in Delta Township, and a crisis between what Bellevue or any of the outlying, out-county districts have. We're all the same. You're going to, and this is what I use because I like to shop there, you go to Horrocks, right? You take that drive because Delta has something to offer. The residents are our tax base there. They contribute. We have a great contract with Delta Township for police services. It's unique. It's a good thing for this county. It's a good thing for the sheriff, and it's a good thing for Delta Township. So we're doing a lot of good things. What we're running into is a situation in which we're getting to a point, and as all of the commissioners have stated, the COVID monies saved us for 3 years. We had $10 million that we could use to balance the county budget. Now, I could say as an administrator differently from the commissioners, was that a logical thing to do? No, because as you had stated, you're pushing, the problem down the road. But how does a board say to you, we want to raise your taxes, but we have all this money? And so they did a responsible thing by not making those decisions. But again, like I said before, they're taking a deep dive, they're looking at things, they're talking, their expectations on administration is higher now. They make it difficult for us to do our jobs. We're busy all the time. It's a great thing, we love it. They're laughing in the back. We are working right now because there's a huge project in Delta Township. It's the Bank Intercounty Drain. My office has been working hours. They work nights, they work the weekends. It's not overtime, but they give their time so that we can seek federal funding and state funding to pay for that project off the top so that we can save the taxpayers and in turn that are in that district, that we save Delta Township, who has a fee that they will have to pay, the county will pay, the road commission will pay. So if we can take money off the top of that project, we can lower the costs in total. So a lot of work, a lot of phone calls that we've been making, great letters from our board, and the legislators, different community agencies, a church in Delta Township, given the fact that they have a huge assessment. You may not know that a church is assessed for a drainage district, but they are. This is the largest project that the county has seen ever. And in the state of Michigan, the mid-Michigan, it's $60 to $70 million. But it's a necessary project. And you'll learn more about that as we go through the year. And you'll learn more about what's happening in our budget process. So for me here and having you here, I want to know what you don't like, what you do like, what we could do better. Ask the tough questions like, why did you do this? Could you have done something differently? That's what I want to know. When we put this report together, that's what the Financial Stability Work Group is going to look at. They're going to put these comments that you're making, great comments, unfunded liabilities, huge issue. And I can tell you, 36 years ago, the things were different because I was here then with Commissioner Brailer. We're the old ones here. Things were different, and there were decisions that were made. Commissioner Augustine said this, decisions that were made that could have been different. There were recommendations when I was just a lower level staff with not a lot of input, but when asked, I said, I don't think that's sustainable. We have this valuation, whether they're right or not, it's a actuarial science. We have this valuation that says it's going to cost us. We should have looked at it earlier. Again, that's a past board. So we can't change that. But we have made changes. And all the changes that we've made have been beneficial to the county budget operations, not to our employees. So to Mr. Anderson's point, they've taken a cut. The Sheriff's Department will tell you that they've taken a cut, and I can point to a lieutenant from our jail right here who's taken a cut, and also a corrections employee as well, who's taken a cut in pension benefits. as a member of the public, that's difficult because you may not have that benefit. But that's why they came here, and that's why they stayed. So these are the things that we're trying to look at and trying to address. So anything that you can say, you can email me, you can call me, I'll sit down with you to talk. I may not have a lot of time, but I'll sit down with you and talk about the things. They're laughing at me because they're afraid I'll then explode, yeah. But we're here, and I've got a great group of people that are just ready to explain and go through everything. And this board is ready to ask the tough questions of my office. So, again, anything that you have to contribute is something that I want to put in a report, not just for this board, but for boards going forward. Because the next board will be a 4-year term versus two-year terms. That'll make a huge difference. You'll have a board who's been here, they'll have goals, but if you set this framework in this financial stability plan, now they have something to work toward and what the county needs, what you've asked for. With that, I'll let it go on. I see Commissioner Toomey.
Connie. Commissioner Toomey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Controller Sobey. I can't speak to what happened 10, 20, 30 years ago here. If you can't tell by looking at me, I'm one of the younger commissioners. I've been here, this is my first term. But I can certainly speak to what this board has done even in the last couple of years. It really comes down to, like Controller Sobey said, at the end of the day, our employees deserve to be, treated with dignity and respect, and a lot of them are our community members that go home and live in Eaton County at the end of the day. We have folks that work nights and weekends to save the taxpayer money. We have one-person departments to save the taxpayer money. And this is never a decision that we come to lightly. But that's what it comes down to at the end of the day. And I mean, even just this year, I remember I've sat through hours of meetings on how we can cut more printers to save this county money, because that's an IT cost at the end of the day. And that's not something that we were looking at years and years ago. That wasn't as big of a concern. And so I want to say that big and small, we talked about some of the changes we've made to employee benefits over time, employee health care, but all the way from big changes like that down to the littler changes like how many printers we have in a hallway. Those are all things that this board has looked at to come to these conclusions. And I do want to say that, this board does believe that everybody in our community, the taxpayer, deserves to be treated with dignity and respect, and so does the employee that works very hard for those taxpayers here. So, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. We've got, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I know we've only got about 8 minutes here, so. There we go. Just wanted to get in, I guess, a few closing thoughts here. When I ran for office, started in 2018, I ran on a message of transparency. And while I wish we were all here gathered under happier news, I do want to thank staff for putting this together, the commissioners on the Financial Stability Committee, because this is what I like to see, some good engagement from the public. And I hope, as you've sat here and heard some of the more expert senior members of the board talk, one thing that's come to mind is the efforts that have been put in over the many years. And the fact that this is a unified front coming from this board. It's not a Democrat plan. It's not a Republican plan. It's a Eaton County Commissioners initiative. We're not the only county that's been dealing with this, and yeah, I thank you guys for putting this together, and thank you to the public for attending and letting us hear it.
Thank you, Commissioner Haskell. So, is there anybody else who'd like to make a comment, statement? Yes, please, approach the podium.
Jennifer Jowett from Delta Township. It sounds like you all have done a really good job at trying to inform us tonight of what's happening and trying to be as transparent as possible. My questions going forward would be ones that I would want more transparency on. If you're asking us to vote on what looks like 3 more mills, because it seems as if the 15 mil cap has been in existence since 1963. I would want to know what other areas are being hit besides just the sheriff's department. Obviously, that's a, big sort of name drop to say that the sheriff's department would be hit. In lieu of the sheriff's department being cut, what specific proposals do you have to save money? Because that was really the only one that was mentioned. You had sort of referenced a couple of things as well, but specifically the sheriff's department. And then if we are voting this forward, how can we ensure that we won't be in this position 5 or 10 years from now? Like when I'm putting together my family's budget, I'm looking at, here are my bills, this is what I need to cover, this is my safety net in case something goes wrong, something comes up, whatever, and I'm planning for the future. So I know that when you're talking about moving from 2 terms to 4 terms, you're obviously thinking about the future as well. So how can we ensure that if we're adding in 3 mills additionally now, that's not just covering attracting new people, but not setting aside things that might be needed, money that might be needed for the future? And also, are the funds being used for anything besides attracting new people? I think you said that 5 mills of the 15 mills goes to administration. What exactly does that cover? And is this 3 mills being used exclusively for administration then?
As far as the 3 mills, yeah, the 3 mills would go directly toward administration only. And as far as some of those other things you mentioned, those are good points, and thank you for them. But until we get done with this report and get a better idea of the direction we go, then we'll be able to address most, if not all, of those statements that you made. So I appreciate those, and those are things that you are correct. The public are going to want to know, and we want all of you to know. Once we get to that point. Commissioner Augustine.
Yeah, so just a couple of points. So very good point on the long term. That had been a discussion since I've been in this committee. Commissioner Brailer often starts off the discussion with, what are you trying to accomplish here? And what we as a financial work group, we're trying to accomplish and are trying to accomplish is the long-term sustainability of the county. So the last thing we wanted to do was to ask the taxpayers, hey, if you can help fund, additional revenues, then we'll be all good, and then come back 4 years later and ask them again. And so that's why we're looking at a potential of increasing the cap by 3 mills. That doesn't necessarily mean that this board or the next board would levy 3 mills. It gives them the ability to. And that, to me, that's where the citizens come into play too, because, and that's one of the things I was going to say before your comments, just in closing to this, is that, I hope everybody recognizes that while this is a specific town hall to specifically talk about this, we meet once a month, every third Wednesday evening in this room, and we are always looking for feedback from the public. And not to mention the different committees that we have, but we all also have emails. We're all also reachable. So I hope that everyone feels that they can share information with us. You don't have to get up here and talk on a podium. I know a lot of people that wouldn't feel comfortable with that. That's quite all right. As Blake said, we have a lot of conversations with our residents in the streets, in the coffee shops, things like that. So, but it was important to us that we tried to address the long-term situation that the county has. And if you look at some of the graphs and charts that we've looked at in the future, it looks like to stabilize what we are doing right now, the amount needed may come close to that 3 mills, but that shouldn't be the case in the future. So that gives a little extra room if needed for anything else in the future that comes up. As Commissioner Mulders pointed out, 10 years ago, IT costs were nowhere near what they are today. So you don't know what it's going to look like in 10 years, but we can try to take as much of that information and try to figure out what we think it's going to look like in 10 years and try to address it now. Because we want to fix it. We want to fix it now for the long term. We don't want to keep going back and asking to fix it. So, because again, we're trying to be truthful and transparent to our taxpayers here. As far as, what the money goes to, so we talked a little bit about that. The option that we've been discussing, I think, a lot here, is the idea of a potential increase of the cap. Now, that cap, if the county were to allocate or were to levy the additional 3 mills, that money would go to the general fund. And so that's basically, I guess, think of it as your and I just think of it as your checking account that you use to pay for your normal operating expenses. So that money would go into that checking account, and how it would be used and distributed would be up to each future board as they do their budgets, which I think is really the right way to do it, because again, things change every year, every term, and so to me, it's responsible to take a look at how those monies are allocated every term. The other option that we have looked at, as I mentioned, I talked a little bit about earlier, was a dedicated millage, and so I mentioned the public safety idea. And so that would be something that you, basically, when you write your ballot language, you tell people, we're using X money for this purpose. We feel that the problem is not in just one area. And so we don't think that's the right approach. And so in our initial conversations, obviously, again, with feedback from the public, that may change. That's why we're here, is to try to write a report that contains feedback from the public. And so, if the public were overwhelming, that they said, we want to have this type of a millage, and that's what we want, then, we certainly have the ability to change our recommendations or make that our recommendations going forward. But certainly, in my opinion, I think that while it does make it a little bit more challenging because you're not telling the taxpayer exactly what you're using the money for, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of other governments will tell you what they're using the money for and then essentially use it for something else. They'll put it into that, but then they'll take money out of that pocket, move it over here to use it for their pet projects. So we never wanted to do that, and I don't want to do that right now. So I know Jim says that it all goes towards administration. I just want to be clear, that's not going to pay Connie's salary for being the administrator. What I think Jim is trying to say is that it's going to the county's general fund to administer the services that we provide holistically for the county. So each board will get to determine how that money is used. And again, that's where the taxpayers, that's where you come into play. You come in here in these meetings, you email us, you tell us how you want that money to be used. And if we as a board don't use that money the way you see fit, you have the opportunity to pick somebody else, and that's how our system works. I guess that would be all I would say to add to that.
One more, Commissioner Haskell.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. To the point of what else would we cut? I think, again, this would probably be better saved for a conversation when we have a full-on report, but I do want to reiterate, the statements of Mr. Anderson earlier and some of the other folks in the room, that it's hard to say that there's more that we can cut when we have balanced so much of the budget on the backs of what we already have. We've got unfilled positions that really have been helping us keep this budget ahead. I had one other thing, Jennifer, and I forgot what I was going to put out, but so I guess that's the main point there. But hopefully when we have a physical report they'll put out, it'll be a little more clear.
I just want to say that I wasn't expecting you to answer all of that now, but going forward, as you're expecting us to vote on it, it would be helpful to have that information.
Yeah, we appreciate that, your comments. So with that, we're going to wrap this up. Again, I want to thank everyone for coming, I really do. This is why we do this and why we are doing this, because we want to desperately hear from you guys. And again, we're going to have another one of these April 17th at 5 o'clock, same setting. So please come back and tell others, and because we'd like to hear from some more people. So, and you're welcome to stay. We got our board meeting at 7 p.m. So with that, this meeting is adjourned.